I said yes 30 years ago. And in the next 9 minutes, my hope is you'll say yes too. Climate change is not just an environmental issue. Instead of letting the climate crisis freak you out, grab a hold of this moment. This is the most extraordinary time to be alive. We are writing the history books about humanity's survival. Children, 100 years from now, will be reading about those of us who stood up to the powers that be, who turned over the pages of the Industrial Revolution and moved us to a clean energy shared economy, overturning systems of patriarchy, capitalism, and racism. Yes, these systems stall our progress, and frankly, large-scale change is what is needed. And the call for climate justice now requires much bolder and swifter action. My activism began 30 years ago as an exchange student in Australia when I learned about injustices to the Aboriginal people. I heard their call to love and protect this earth. Well, I fell in love with the Great Barrier Reef. I made a collection of algae for my university's herbarium, should something ever happen to the reef. Little did I know that it would go from this to this in my lifetime. One of my professors back then told us that the population would double to 6 billion people in 25 years, and I thought to myself, how does he know who will have babies and how many? Well, he was right. He left us with big questions like, how are we going to feed everyone? And what if everyone in the world wanted washers and dryers? And when he told us that it took around 600 gallons of water to make a hamburger, I had to stop eating beef right then, right there. My life took another turn the day I saw the film An Inconvenient Truth. Who saw that film? Yeah. Well, in the end, you may remember Al Gore said, if future generations could talk to us, they would be asking us, what were you thinking? And why didn't you do anything when you had the chance? I have never cried so hard in my life because I didn't want my 2 daughters asking me those questions. And I committed in that moment to do everything I could and to move others to act as well. Think of a time your life changed because of something you saw or learned. When I learned entire countries were banning plastic bags, I had to do the same in my community to connect people to their carbon footprint through their single-use plastic pollution. And, well, yes, the fossil fuel industry. But how do we stand up and demand greater change? Here's an example. My community stopped North America's largest proposed coal export terminal in Northwest Washington. Yeah. Many grassroots efforts sprouted. I started 350 Bellingham to connect the carbon footprint of shipping coal to Asia to burn because it was clearly a bad idea. But it wasn't until our local indigenous neighbors, the Lummi Nation, burned a symbolic check to show they wouldn't be bought that we felt we stood a chance. And it was featured on the front page of the New York Times. The community spoke up, the Lummi defended their fishing rights, and together we won. And we celebrated. And after this 5-year battle, the bonds between our neighbors and the place we protected are strengthened beyond measure. And globally, people are rising up everywhere. And the page in the history books that will stand out as our turning point was the moment in Paris when 195 countries agreed to take collective action on climate change. Yes, you can, yeah. This is huge. This is huge. Yet, the government's commitments aren't strong enough. And I recently went back to school to figure out how can we move even more people to act and build the climate justice movement to urge our governments to take bolder action. I found out in an extensive study of over 300 social movements that it only takes 3.5% of the population actively involved for a social movement to be successful. So, in a community of 10,000, do the math. That's only 350 people. This 3.5% creates a momentous force that shifts people's thinking. Climate justice, the term, first appeared in a 1999 CorpWatch report defining climate change as a human rights issue. And 10 years ago, citizens called for system change, not climate change, shaping the narrative that systemic change is necessary. Climate justice frames the climate crisis as a moral call to act by addressing issues of equality, human rights, collective rights, and historical responsibilities for change. While our government is the only one that has withdrawn from the Paris Agreement, this is why we must join the call for global climate justice now and push for local and state level action. And yes, many cities are committing to 100% renewable or fossil free, even as I speak. We must also transition together while listening to and working with the leadership of people of color and indigenous and marginalized communities. Yakima Tribal Chair Jody Gowdy says it best. We have the mind, the heart, and the spirit at this point in time to change the future so that indeed our future generations will be able to experience what you and I and our ancestors have. Right now, 21 young people are suing our federal government for inadequate protection of their future, and their case is successfully moving through the courts. If these kids are doing what they can do, what can we do? There are countless ways to engage in the climate justice movement. In my region, we mobilized in kayaks and helped stop Shell Oil from drilling in the Arctic. And we won, yeah. My friend here was moved to act because of his love to protect the ocean. But who's protecting who in this picture? The police need to protect the citizens, not corporations. And as we saw in Standing Rock, peaceful water protectors helped everyone around the world learn that water is life and must be protected. This is it. Each and every one of us personally contributes to this crisis, which is why each and every one of us must personally respond. So, what will you say yes to? Get engaged in any of the justice issues, because climate justice is the intersectionality of social, racial, economic, and environmental struggles. Yes, they intersect, and our collective actions tilt the balance of power. Exercise your privilege. Be willing to stand in solidarity with nonviolent direct action, even if this means risking arrest. Yes, the protected must start protecting, as we saw when the veterans showed up to protect the indigenous at Standing Rock. It is critical that we show up and be counted and stand up and speak out. All the marches, sit-ins, standing up to climate denial and for what is right is in our hands. Share your passion with others. Who is the first person you can think of that you want to join you? Because we're building a movement, right? Who's gonna, yeah. To help you in your efforts, I made a climate justice field manual. It's full of tips and resources. It's a free download to help you build the movement. How each and every one of us can be a part. Before I finish, I want to leave you with 4 actions that you can say yes to now. First, divest from fossil fuels and urge institutions to do the same. Yes. Because if it's wrong to wreck the planet, then it's simply wrong to profit from the wreckage, right? 2, be a conscientious consumer. Donate to your favorite causes, and of course, vote for the climate. 3, eat a plant-based diet, support your local farmers, and lower your carbon footprint. And lastly, pick your cause or causes and get involved in your community right away. Know in your heart what moves you to act, because this is for life. The Climate Justice Field Manual will give you many ideas on how to engage and move others to act too. Now is time to say yes and use your skills, resources, influence, and your passion, because we have a shared responsibility to act and protect with justice as our moral compass. Now, if you're willing and able, please stand up and be counted. And let's say yes together. Because we need everyone. Everywhere. And technology. We need everyone everywhere in the technology. Doing everything all the time as quickly as possible. Can I get a yes? Yes! Yes! Thank you.